Hello everyone, welcome again, and do not forget to subscribe as always. So this video is about what we've been discussing on social media, and this is something that happened in Uganda. It's about the LGBTQ rights. So for many Africans, some Africans say this is not a non-issue, and some people say it's against African values and African traditional systems. So LGBTQ rights, to them, are some sort of impositions by the West on Africa. So Africans have their own traditions, they have their own countries, and their countries have values and they have laws. So if an African country passes a law against same-sex marriages or relationships, then they should be respected as they are. That's an argument that many Africans are making. On face value, that's understandable. So Uganda is a sovereign country, Kenya is a sovereign country, South Sudan, Algeria, Nigeria. So on face value, that's an acceptable argument. No one can actually say something against it. That's why for many Africans, Biden cannot threaten Saudi Arabia or the Gulf countries or any Islamic country that is against same-sex relationship or marriages. So it's especially when Biden says that he's going to sanction Uganda, but he's not sanctioning Saudi Arabia, then Africans are going to have a strong argument against that. Now, those things are understandable, but here is where the problem is. So people who say that the LGBTQ rights are Western are wrong in many aspects, because many Westerners, even today, I'm not going to go to history because people who say this is Western assume that LGBTQ rights have always been accepted in the West, and they're not. The same laws that are being passed in Africa today were passed in the West. They used to be hanged, they used to be persecuted a lot, they used to be marginalized. So to say this is Western is to assume Westerners have always accepted it, and they have not. Today, there are many people in the West who, if they had the chance, they would actually pass punitive laws like what Uganda has passed. So when you say this is against African traditional values, you're not making a strong argument. So there's some Westerners who say same-sex relationship or marriages are against the traditional family. So when they say traditional family, they're not saying traditional African family. They're just saying the traditional family, the traditional Western family. That is a man and a woman and their children. That's what they call traditional family. So when you say this is against African values, you're making part of the argument. In the West, even today. So some Christians in the US and in Canada are actually celebrating what Museveni and the MPs have done in Uganda. They like what they're doing. So that's why I say, and many people say, LGBTQ rights are human rights. They are not Western rights or Western value system. And the second part is any argument today, any argument you're making against the LGBTQ community has already been made in the West. There's no any single argument you can say against the LGBTQ community that has not been made in the West. Whether the issue about them being disgusting, being immoral, corrupting values and all this, they've already been made in the West. So what you're saying is a phase the West has gone through. And even personally, as an individual, as an African young man, when I came to Canada, I didn't quite understand. I didn't understand how a man can be in a relationship with a man and a woman can be in a relationship with another woman. I didn't quite understand. And many of you who live in Africa, you may have the same. You cannot conceptualize it. How can you make sense of that? Some of my colleagues came with me because some of you assume if you're in the West, then you accept this. No. There's some of my colleagues who came with me, who've been in Canada for over 20 years, but they're still against the LGBTQ rights. So sometimes it's about your personal values. I accept the LGBTQ rights. There's some Westerners who don't accept. So when you say that it's just African issue, no. There's some Westerners who are against those rights. This is just about the humanity of some people. I have professors who are members of the LGBT community. I have students who sit in my classes, and I have to treat them as human beings. They have no horns. They have nothing against me. I just have to treat them with respect. They are not, what they want is for me to accept their preferences, who they are. They're not promoting that to influence me because they can't. I have my preference as a straight man. They have their preference. I expect them to respect me as a straight man, and I will respect them whether they're lesbians or gay. So as someone who was raised in Africa, someone who went through the horrors of war, someone who went through systems that persecute you because of who you are, I cannot make sense of being part of an oppressive system. So this is something that, as human beings, these are just people. I meet with them in the workplace, I teach them, some of them teach me, and they have nothing against me. So when you see them as a block, as a group of people, they become abstract. They are not people until you know some of them. That's when you can accept them as human beings. But as long as you see them as some groups, as some people, they just become numbers. But the moment you know that they are human beings, human beings, all they want is for you and I to respect them. And those of you who say they are going to crap our kids, come on, man. Our kids, we worry about our kids even with the straight people, not just gay people.